Friday, August the 7th, 2020, and we're here to gather for a purpose of a workshop. The agenda for the workshop includes an update on the proximity plan, the agenda review for next Tuesday, August 11th, a whistleblower vendor update, and a master board training update. At this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Atkins, who will probably be ready to introduce our Davis people. Dr. Atkins.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just give me a moment. I'm just going to get to our agenda.
Welcome to Mr. Katz and Dominic Gemelli.
I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Dominic to go ahead and get us started with the proximity plan update.
Well, good afternoon, board members, Dr. Atkins and council. We're here today at the workshop to provide you with an update for the elementary proximity plan. We usually are scheduled every other month at the capital update. However, due to the number of items on the August 25th briefing agenda, we asked to bring this to you today. So David Cates is here with us today from Davis Demographics, who's going to walk us through a presentation. So David, if you want to go ahead and get started, and at the end, we'll answer any questions you might have at this point. Thank you, David.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. It's about a month and a half since I last presented to you. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll see my PowerPoint I'm going to walk you through. Give me a second here. And hopefully give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen, or somebody. There you go. Thank you. Great. All right. So let's walk you through kind of where we left off from last time. I'd like to start off with the project overview. You saw this last time, but now we've moved further in the process. We did our data collection. Starting in June, we ran our first scenarios with your core group of district staff. In the last month, July, August, we've now expanded. We've now presented to the full district stakeholder group. There's about 20, 25 people in that group. Just last week, we were presented to the about a 25-member community stakeholder group, and we're even adding a few more members to that. Our next meeting with both those groups will be in about 2 weeks. I think the 20th and the 21st of August. We'll be unveiling kind of our first scenario, if you will, of the first proximity plan, and that will start the next few months of kind of finalizing our initial scenarios. And our goal is by November to actually present these scenarios to the full general public. So we're on track for that still. And we will be updating the data in the fall, especially with all the COVID-19 impacts, especially with development. We want to make sure we see if there's any impacts on our forecasts, so we'll be updating that. We revised the scenarios we already presented to the public with the new numbers, and take it again to the committees, to the public, by March, finalizing a plan or two to eventually in July present to the board for your final vote. So we're definitely all still on track, I'm happy to say. One of the documents I provided to the group is an attendance matrix, or a series of them. Can you see my table on my screen? I will present, I just realized that this was actually not part of the PowerPoint, but I will follow up later today with a copy of these documents so that you could have this to look through in your leisure. But just kind of explain what this document shows you. We've broken your district up into the 22 planning communities, and then the schools that are within each of those planning communities. And then you can see where they pull their students from. So for example, we look at the school that's in the Estero Elementary School, Pine Woods. You can see that 181 of those students, total enrolled at the bottom, is 1147. 181 of them come from the Bonita Springs area. 578 comes from the Estero area, which makes sense. We pull 230 students from the San Carlos community. And then you can even see at the bottom, we pull out pre-K kids, because not every school has them. So you can see each school that has pre-K, the special ed, self-contained numbers, out of district kids, you don't have too many. But this is a way that you can kind of see where the kids are coming from, different communities within your district. And we have all 49 of your elementary schools. There's a second page to this. Can't really see it here, I won't go through all these, but every single school is accounted for. And we've also done, we've done this for your middle and your high schools as well. So I just wanted to share with you that we have those documents available as well. If you remember in our last presentation, we showed you that we did a 10-year forecast. Now we gave you kind of an overall summary, kind of the 20,000 foot level of what we're projecting for your 3 main regions in your district. All of them over 3,000 kids, most of them coming out of the east area. Overall growth is almost 12%. All this is kind of in line with what you've experienced over the past 10 years. And overall, you can see at the top, net growth of over 10,000, to be exact, 10,262 students we're forecasting for the next 10 years. So let's do a little deeper dive into these numbers. I'm not expecting you to be able to see all these. Maybe you do. You'll have the PowerPoint to review at your leisure. But what this forecast, what we do is we look at your first 4 years, or these are real counts of kids, 2016, 17, 18, and this last October 2019. And we break it down by all your current 12 zones. And then we forecast those zones out for the next 10 years. And you can see the above, these don't include pre-K at this point, they're just the K-5 numbers mostly. And we are focusing on these numbers. We have a little summary here at the right that you can kind of see overall, this is over the next 10 years. Most all of your zones, we're looking at growth. In fact, all of them we're expecting growth. The green are the ones where we see the most growth. And then I like to show things on a map, because that's what we do, my business, my company. So here's the same numbers, but now looking at them geographically. So we skip every few years on the map, but I've added arrows to kind of show you the predominant growth areas in your district. The areas where there's no arrows means there's a little bit of growth, not substantial, but the substantial ones are the ones that we kind of highlighted here by zone. We've also broken your district up into the 22 planning communities that the county recognizes, and we did the same thing. So it's a little bit more smaller regions in a lot of cases. And when you look at a small region, sometimes now you'll see some areas of a little bit of decline, but for the most part, everything is growing, especially in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Lehigh Acres, and South Fort Myers. Those are probably no surprise to you. But you can look at the historical numbers too. These are not projections, the first 4 columns. And if you want to look at our annual 10-year forecast for each of these regions, we have it broken out as well. And then we have the same information on, oops, sorry. Let me go back here, sorry. On the map, it's a little, there's 22 areas as opposed to 12 subzones. So it's a little bit smaller area, but you can see geographically, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Lehigh Acres, those are the big growth areas, South Fort Myers as well. But you have a few little pockets we're anticipating some declines, not much. Again, this is a 10-year forecast, so if there's any declines, it's very minimal in these regions. And then we had these, I shared with you last time, I think, the criteria or the data that we're going to look at when we are looking at your zones, your future zones, your smaller proximity zones. So we're looking now at your current subzones and some of these test scores and language efficiency, free and reduced lunch. So we have this, for example, by each of your subzones, each of your 12, not all your students get graded on these FSAs, so that's why there's a certain percentage or a third of the kids that are not graded. But of the ones that are, you can see the ones that get the higher scores in certain areas and the lower in other zones. The language efficiency, you can look at it. Everything can be compared to the base, which is your district-wide or county level in yellow. You can do nice comparisons, or you can look at it by your combined east, south, or west zones. We also have the direct search status percentages. These are the free and reduced lunch applications. And at the far right, your special ed percentages are self-contained. Move on here. Now, a little deeper dive into those numbers. We now, instead of 12 areas, now we have 22 of your planning communities. Same exact idea, the same numbers at the bottom countywide, but now you can look at it more in your geographic areas or groupings. As you probably are, I'm sure all know, 5 the higher number, test scores 1 the lower. You can see the areas that have the higher or the lower percentages. These are in your existing boundaries right now. And then you're, again, the language efficiency or free and reduced lunch and your special ed percentages, how they all compare to each other and how they compare to the district-wide average. Now I took that table and I kind of look at it now a little bit blown up more, easier for you to see. I picked your predominant 7 communities and comparing it to the district-wide average. You can see areas like Estero and San Carlos have the higher test score percentages to the other areas, as well as compared to the district-wide average. You can look at the lower ones, percentages, ones that have the lower test scores, the ones that have the language efficiency. Bonita Springs has the highest of 30% in its area for language efficiency. The direct search status percentage applying for free and reduced lunch. North Fort Myers, Lehigh Acres, and Fort Myers have the highest numbers. District-wide average is at the 50% level, and then you can see the self-contained as well. Other criteria we're looking at for the equity and diversity issues is to check what we call the Housing Affordability Index, short HAI. It means that if something is around 100, that's just affordable. Anything above 100 is more affordable. Anything below 100 is less affordable. Your district-wide average is a 106, which means right around Estero, Cape Coral are right at the district-wide average level. The North Fort Myers, Lehigh Acres areas are the most affordable parts of your district. And no surprise, most of your island areas, those are the lesser affordable areas. And then we also had another indicator, percentage of their income that goes towards their mortgage. You look to my left here, when you get over 30%, I kind of call it going getting into the danger zone. 15 to 25 is kind of the 20 normal percentage of people's income that should go towards their mortgage. When we were collapsing in 2007, 2008, there were people that had like 30% of their income going towards mortgages. That led to the collapse. But you can kind of see here, there's a correlation, obviously. The more affordable areas, the less percentage going towards those mortgages, and the ones that have the higher amounts, you get to see that there. The tapestry categories as well. You can see these are kind of a footprint or a picture of the communities. Anything that starts with a 9 is a senior, which is the majority of your district is senior dominated. But you can look at other parts of your district, like maybe Buckingham or even Fort Myers, where there is a senior element. But you can see there's other categories. They're off to the right. We can get more detail for you on what those are, but these are sorted by the more affordable down to the least affordable areas. This is another document. I don't expect you to be able to read all the numbers. I will show you another screen that will break these down to those 7, but these are just to show you, you have all the information for all 22 of your planning communities compared to the district-wide average. Let me go to the next screen. I'll show you, it'll be easier to read. So we have this grouping here of population summaries of the last 2 census, an estimate for 2019, and an estimate for 5 years from now. Just a heads up, these numbers are being updated as we speak. I'll have an estimate for 2020 and an estimate for 2025. I'll be presenting to the committees in the next few weeks. but this is what we had as of our last updates. You can see the breakdown of your predominant communities by population and then where it's going to be going in the next 5 years. We have the household totals. Remember here, this is your district-wide totals are at the bottom. And now we have median household income. You can see that Cape Coral is right at that level in district-wide average. But you have areas like San Carlos, Estero, and Bonita Springs that are above the average. And then all these cases, in every case, except for maybe Lehigh, but they're all, for the most part, a lot of these are going to be growing in household income. And then here's the home values. Same idea. District-wide average, you can see roughly Cape Coral's about that same area, but you've got Estero and, let's say, Bonita Springs that are quite a bit above your district-wide average. Diversity index, anything that's a high number, like in the 60s or 70s, is the more diverse. You're never going to get 100% diversity or zero diversity, but the district-wide averages right now are in the high 50s, which is very good. But you can see some areas like North Fort Myers, not quite as diverse. There's definitely Lehigh Acres and Fort Myers, among other areas in the district. And an estimate that the numbers should all be getting a little bit more diverse over the next 5 years. And then I summarized again the top 3 tapestries that make up the different type of communities within each of your planning communities. We're going to the next one. And just kind of in wrapping up what we have been doing and what we're going to be doing, we have been meeting with your core district staff, about 5-6 individuals, going through some scenarios that we want to present, an initial one to the committees in a couple of weeks. So that's happening in late August. So we kind of started the boundary scenario process, and we will be sharing them with the stakeholders here shortly. As I mentioned before, our goal is to spend the next 2 months meeting several times, maybe 3-4 times, maybe more, with the stakeholders, fine-tuning the proximity zones, the smaller zones, and then sharing them with the public in November with everybody and get their feedback. So we're in the 2 or 3 month period where we're getting constant feedback and fine-tuning, and then we'll present it to the public in November. And obviously we'll share that with you as well. And the goal is, just a reminder, we're trying to be creating smaller proximity zones to cut down on the transportation, but at the same time doing our best to achieve equity and diversity among these smaller regions. And I'll open it up to questions if any of you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Cage. Board members. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Well, I was hoping someone would jump in before me, but good afternoon. And thank you, Mr. Cates. Is it Cates?
It's Cates, yes, thank you.
Okay. The one question I have is the community stakeholders group. Who is that? How was it selected? Who is involved in that particular aspect?
Do you want me to answer that, Dominic, or do you want to jump in first?
I can jump in. Also, we're happy to provide the list to you, Ms. Giddens. What we did is we took the different departments here with help from like Jared Eady's group, operations, and Adam Malloy of all of our community groups that were out there that we've worked with in the past. We've reached out to, I think we have about 28 people on this group for our meeting on the 21st, if I'm not mistaken. But we certainly can get you the list of the folks that we have on that current committee.
Those are community individuals?
Community leaders for the most part.
Okay.
Covering the entire district.
Covering the entire district, or I'm
yes.
Right now asking about individual districts. And since we do have the co-op out here, I would really like to have us, the co-op involved with that in some way, if not a representative from our group or something. So I would just like to, and maybe Dominic or superintendent or whomever, to have us involved with that project?
You certainly can share the list with all the board members also, and if you want to take a look at that and then give us some recommendation afterwards, Ms. Gittens, that'd be great.
Thank you. There was another question, let's see. In the south, it said southeast, is that on one of your maps? Is that basically looking at Stero, that area between 75 and 82, where there's all the housing that's being built?
Yeah, I think you're talking about like the corkscrew area, maybe that you referred to, where all the developments going on down around there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's pretty much what makes up the southeast region. I'm kind of looking at my notes right now.
And what type of, a lot of that then is based on future development and future people coming in. How do we know that it's going to be more school-age children as opposed to retirees? And I know that's hard to determine.
Right.
It depends on your marketing, all that type of thing. But if we do a massive plan and it ends up being more of the, retirees as opposed to school age, then we've done all of this planning and there's, not the students to fulfill it.
That's an excellent question. And I apologize if I introduced the idea of student generation rates to the board last meeting. What we did for our forecast was we looked at units built within the last 5 years of a certain housing type. Obviously, senior housing or 55 and older really are not going to be generating many students. So when we do our development research with the cities and the county, we ask and we make sure we know which ones are senior, which ones are not senior. And we pretty much exclude most of the senior units. If the projects change, if let's say now this year they say it wasn't going to be senior and now it will be, or vice versa, when we do our updates, we will capture that. But when we do the generation rates, what those do is we look at comparable units that have been built in the last 5 years, whether it's single family homes or maybe apartments, for example, and we look at what we call the yield, or what K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 students have been coming out of those homes. And then we apply those rates to your future units. So when you look at whether it's a large project of thousands of units or even one that's 30, there's a percentage factor that a certain number of kids out of every 100 homes will be generated at your 3 grade levels, and those get folded into the forecast. So all those future developments are in our forecast, but as we all know, when you do a 10-year forecast, it's a big guess. Best guess. Even the county and the city planners are guessing when I ask them those questions. There could be projects that are even on the books now that show up 3 years from now, but it's based on the best available data. And as we do updates every fall, we will do another clean sweep and make sure that it's as up to date and current and accurate as possible.
Is it fair to say that there is always the potential that some of the data that's focused on, like you said, senior housing, that some of the people that are in that age group may decide they don't want to live in a senior defined area, but to live in a more generic area. So that would, skew the numbers as well.
Yeah, every year we receive a new snapshot of your student data every October, and we do a refresh. So we'll be doing a refresh this fall. And anytime the students move around, or obviously the parents move and bring their kids with them, we will get a refresh and we'll get to see those trends of them moving, like you just brought up, and that will be part of the update as well.
And the last question I have then is, how has COVID-19 changed the view of this 10-year, prospectus as to what we, are planning on doing in 10 years. And then major, all of that.
Well, that's actually an excellent question, and I hear that from all my clients, because this is what we do forecasting. The advantage you have, I think I mentioned this last time, was we are going to be doing an update this fall. So when I did our clean sweep of all the developments, I went and visited and spoke to the salespeople, and that kind of ended right around, obviously, March. And a lot of their sales offices either shut down or went online. I could answer you, I don't have quite answers yet. We are going to be doing another sweep of homes starting this summer with the help of district staff. And I would say the construction, this is probably more of a national, not just Lee County, the construction has not slowed down. The sales took a dip for about a 2 or 3 month period, but we received some information actually from your city of Fort Myers, provided a recent document that showed that there's kind of a rebound now of people buying now again. So it's too early to answer that question, but I think that come this October, November, when we do the refresh, I should have a very excellent answer for you. And we'll see, maybe there'll be no change, maybe it'll be downsized a little bit, we'll see, but it's too early for me to give you a straight answer right now.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ginn. Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I actually, good afternoon, Mr. Cates. I was also the same thing that Ms. Gittens had asked about the committee and the stakeholder group. I would very much like to know who those people are as well. And
sure.
Because to me, that really means a lot. Also, I know that we have it, the regions are separated, and I know you have told us this over and over again, east, south, and west. But I know, like in my head, living here for so long, I have an east, south, west, and a central, which is Fort Myers. In my
right.
So when I'm looking at the numbers, which I want to go back and study all those numbers that you just put through for us. When you look at Lehigh and you look at Fort Myers, those numbers are very close, on those slides that you show. So I was kind of shocked by that, because that's considered, I think, the south zone versus the east zone. But
I think Fort Myers is split between the east and the south, if my memory is correct.
Part of it
so it's not all in one. Lehigh, I think, is all in the east. Actually, you know what? I have to go back. I think a little part of that is actually in the. I apologize. You know what? Let me have my screen here. I'm just kind of looking here. Your zones.
Because I know I had asked you last time about North Fort Myers, because we saw Fort Myers, Lehigh, South, Cape, which is of course huge, and then North Fort Myers, which I think was pulled in with part of maybe East and part of.
Yeah, I'm looking here, and it looks like Fort Myers is partly in the east, the northern part, and a good chunk of it is in the south zone 1, and all Lehigh is within east, but it's broken up between zone 2 and zone 3.
Right, okay. And I just think that that's good to understand, because I know when you hear that, you think of east being just Lehigh and south. That's why I always have that central in my head. And then the other question I thought was interesting for Fort Myers was Metro Fusion. That was the only one that had 11C, the Metro Fusion. What does that mean? Business and walkable city? Is that what that means?
I don't remember where we were.
At the latter slides.
Look at that real quick here.
And it had the numbers, it had like 9A, 11C.
Oh, those are the tapestries, yeah.
Sorry.
What those are, it breaks, there's essentially 67 distinct type of communities. This is the studies done for the whole United States, and it looks at certain neighborhood characteristics, and they rank them, and there's actually usually up to 20 tapestry ones, but most of the top 3 make up the majority of the percentages. Now, when you look at the list, you'll see them into like life mode 1, it starts with a 1, they call affluent. The ones that start with 9 are the seniors.
Right.
There's one called 7 they call it ethnic enclaves. And there's different terms. You could actually go online and look them up, and it will give you a full description of each of those. But anything that starts with a 9 is, senior dominated.
Well, I like being called Metro Fusion. I like that name. Thank you.
What is that? Yeah, I see that was life mode number 11.
Yes.
And that's for you're right, Fort Myers area. The most predominant one is called, Metro Fusion. And if you go online and type in ESRI tapestries and type in that number, letter code, it'll give you a full detailed description of that profile.
And I think that's good for us to know when and understand the different types of communities. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, then I will, Mr. Cates and Dominic, I will say thank you very much for a very informative presentation, albeit one that we need to study a little bit more.
It's a little overwhelming.
Thank you. Oh, Mrs. Gittens has her hand up again, so we're going to.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just very quickly, as we are, digesting all of this, if we have further questions, can we contact Dominic, Mr. Cates, or for an expert?
Yes.
Okay.
Reach out to Dominic or Courtney Gordon, and then I'll be happy to answer your additional questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So our next thing on the agenda is our agenda review for the August 11th, 2020 regular meeting. Someone's got some interference, I think. Okay. Dr. Atkins, take it away.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. And just comment on the presentation that we just saw. When you start digging into the details, it can get extremely fascinating. So, I would just encourage you to do that. A lot of great information. Dr. Savage is super excited about where this project is going. He has been sharing that with me. So I think great things to come. So that takes us to our agenda review, and I'll just go through these questions. The first question that board members had to do with the item E, consent, academic services. We have several questions that Ms. Kennedy will be helping us with. The first one is E1, approval of Title I, Part A, improving the academic achievement of the Disadvantaged 2020-2021 grant. The question is public school eligibility survey grant application starting on page 2941. Please explain how the percent of the grant is decided for each school, including an explanation of the allocation of parental involvement. So I know Terry Kennedy, I believe, from Academic Services is going to respond to that question for us.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Dr. Atkins, what agenda item is that?
It is E1, approval of Title I, Part 1, improving the academic achievement of disadvantaged 2020-2021 grant.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. We had several questions on grants, although we have lots of grants on here. And probably the most complicated question was the first one, because it's a process where we follow the federal regulation guidelines in determining the distribution of funds for Title I. But the percentage of Title I students in each school is determined by the actual percentage of families that receive federal assistance. So that's the first thing that's done, is determining what percent have Title I families in their school. And then the distribution is done based on a rank order and then by actual level of schools. And then from that rank order, then the determination is broken down based on that. The actual parent involvement, there was a question about the parent involvement. 1% of the allocation is set aside for parent involvement, and schools do different things with how they do their parent involvement. So that's a simplistic, or the simplest I could do as far as the explanation of the Title I distribution, following federal guidelines. Oscar can give, we're more than happy to come in and give a more in-depth, because that would require charts and so forth, but a more in-depth explanation as to the distribution, if you need it.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Ms. Gittens has a question.
Okay, thank you, and hi.
Hello.
Never see you. You're stuck in an office somewhere. How are you doing? Okay, so my question is in relationship to your answer, do we consider, since the Title I school, if I'm saying this right, the Title I school receives funding based on the percentage of students that fall within that socioeconomic group. So do we, and this may not be you, maybe someone else, but then do we consider that as far as school choice, and in the future with proximity, how many students there are at a particular school that fall within that? Is that a consideration at all in determining?
I'm not sure that that's Title I. We simply use, I mean, we handle the financial part. As far as choice and the other questions, that wouldn't be under grants.
Right. So that may be Dr. Atkins, or maybe you can get it back to me later. And I mean, if you understand what I'm saying.
I'm not sure I am clear.
Okay, so
if you could restate your question, that'd be great.
Okay, so basically, student choice allocates who goes to a particular school. And then the grant for Title I says, of those students that go to that school, here is the percentage of this socioeconomic group. Therefore, this is the percentage of money that, will go to that school, and the 1% for the families. So what I'm saying is, before we get to that stage, do we consider the number of students that fall into that when we're talking about school choice or proximity? Are there a plethora of students at a specific school that fall within that socioeconomic group that makes it Title I? Does that make sense, or can someone else?
I think a little bit, but let me clarify that the percentage of students, it's based on the federal assistance that a family receives. So you can't ask, with school choice, are you receiving federal assistance? So that is done after the placement at the school. And the actual percentage of funds that are given to each Title I school is not directly related to the percentage of families that qualify. So for example, every school that has 75% of their families with federal assistance, they all qualify for Title I, but they don't necessarily qualify for 75%. They are part of the bucket for Title I. So it's not directly related to the percentage of students that are within the school.
Right.
Okay. I think one of the things, Ms. Gittens, that as we move forward, working with Davis Demographics and working on our student proximity-based students, our plan, one of the things that we'll be working with them to do is to provide, I think, more equitable distribution of students across the school district. So I think that will help. And then the other thing that we do that isn't necessarily linked to Title I, but we do tier our funding based on student need at a school. So where we have schools that have the highest degree of student need, we have the highest degree of funding for those particular students in terms of how we allocate. So that's that tiered funding system you've heard us talk about.
Right, and thank you for that. And yes, that's what I was getting at with our new proximity plan. Is it going to address that? Because if we're narrowing the area of proximity to a school in that particular plan, then that creates the issue of are we going to end up with more Title I schools? Because within that, vicinity, if that's the socioeconomic group. So that to me is the question I had about that. And thank you.
And speaking of, I neglected to say at the end of the presentation that Dominic and Davis Demographics did, that we did send out to board members, as you were on the line here, the membership list for the committee so that you can see
Right.
that.
Yes.
So you should have that now.
And can we, I don't know if you've discussed, and maybe I missed it, with the tiered distribution. Can we get more information about that?
Related to the budget tiered distribution, is that what you mean?
Yes, and the schools. I mean, you've mentioned it about with the schools, so if we could get some additional information about that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely.
And thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
All right, and Ms. Kennedy, hang tight, please. Takes us to the next one, E3, which is approval of the grant proposal for Title I, Part D, Subpart 2, neglected, delinquent, and at risk. Question is this a new grant? And how will the schools be decided on, or will it be based on individual students in the school district?
So Title I Part D is not new. It is where James Buchanan oversees DJJ. So this is a grant that's used to provide the services for the students that are involved with DJJ. And the funds are basically being used as they have been in previous years, and that is to fund a part-time or half of a unit towards the transition specialist and the coach, and then some supplies, but everything related to DJJ services.
Okay. So
Great, thank you. So now we have another question, Ms. Kennedy, from Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. And actually, it kind of goes with what we were just talking about, but I had my hand up for the E1 as well. I'm assuming, one of my questions was how many of the grants are new, and we can get to that later. So I'm assuming that most of these are they're renewed or similar to other years. And as we were talking about E1, I was looking at the staffing summary, and what jumped out to me was that whereas fiscal year 20, we had 158 teacher classroom units. That's going up to 178, but there is a significant decrease when you think about more teachers in the paraprofessionals and then other certified personnel. Could you talk to that just a little bit and how that's going to affect the classroom instruction?
So each school was giving their allocation, and what we did was we probably had about 12 hours worth of Zoom sessions with curriculum and the school, as well as the Title I department, in looking and reviewing plans. Every school had some variances in how they wanted to use their Title I funds to best meet their needs, and that change is the sum total of the 45 schools. So I can't give you specifics off the top of my head here, but I could look at, if you'd like me to look at something specific, I can get back to you on that.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure how that worked, and when it says other certified personnel, are those counselors, and what kind of certified personnel are we talking about? I'm assuming counselors.
And I believe that would involve counselors, or, for example, parent involvement specialists. There's lots of positions that are involved with whatever that's, each school has their own specific needs. And so, okay. But I can get the particulars for you if you'd like.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that even though it looks like there'll be more classrooms, that particular one is cut in half.
And I can tell you that there's probably going to be a lot of amendments in that, a lot of the plans that were originally written prior to the COVID situation. We had staff development that didn't happen. We had cine days that didn't happen. We also have with Title I, positions that are staffed that sometimes they have difficulty in finding staff. So we anticipate changes with that as well.
Okay, because that's kind of worrisome if that's a trend, because yeah, as you said, especially with the COVID in the Title I schools, we're going to have so many, I guess you could call them, like trauma issues of people that are maybe at some point being evicted or doubling up or tripling up with people, et cetera, et cetera. And just, all of the outcomes, not just really for Title I students from the COVID and everything that's been going on. But
so we do anticipate some changes. We do anticipate some changes, and one of the things, there were lots of grants this summer. I feel like it was 2 months of just working on grants.
Yeah.
We have another grant that will be coming to you, the ESSER grant that comes from CARES Act, that actually there was a lot of mental health added to that, so that we can address many of those needs.
Okay, and just one more follow-up on that. I know you said, and this would be for any of the grants, that the schools make their individual decisions, which I think is good. But on the other hand, do we have a guideline or certain parameters in which the schools operate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have a lot of the federal guidelines as well as districts. So when I talked about the Zoom meetings, we had a director for curriculum from each area that helped us with, that we shouldn't be using funds to pay for that, but yes, this is a reasonable, so there was guidance and review by the various departments. And our goal for next year is to actually try to incorporate all the titles involved in those meetings so that we make sure that we are addressing the needs and maximizing the dollars.
Okay, I just, I understand you can't have, because schools differ so much in populations, that you can't have everybody exactly the same. But I think as a school district this size, it behooves us to have certain parameters that, that somebody can't say, oh, we'd rather have more teachers in smaller classes, and so we're going to forego X number of other certified personnel. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I just had one quick question, just for clarification, please, Terry. When you were saying that E3, it wasn't new, it was regarding the DJJ, did you say it was for the transitional person?
There is, from that particular Title I-D, there is a position for an academic coach and then a 0.5 of a transitional position. I'm not sure what it's, a transition.
Well, is that the position where they follow up where the child, because I thought we did have that at one time, and it was a teacher. She was teaching, and then half the day she was at the district doing just.
And that may still be. I just know the overall grant, what it pays for, and pays for half of a position for the transition specialist to, as you said, follow up with the students that are involved with DJJ.
Right, because I thought they took that away, or I was told that. So I'm glad to hear that that's there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Kennedy, I don't see any more hands. So thank you very much. I do have
more questions.
More questions for her, so.
Yes, okay, go ahead.
Well, if you have one on this last one, go ahead.
No, I don't. I'm going to hold mine because it's for a little bit down the road here.
Okay, so the next question, this relates to item E3, approval of Title I private school contract for one-on-one learning. The question is, why do we apply for grants for private schools?
So we are required on certain federal funds that we have to include private schools. And with that, so for example, with Title I, we have 7 schools that participate with Title I. Basically what happens is with the federal funds, which ESSER is the newest grant that we were given that has federal funds that we have to share with private schools. The requirement is that we have to have a consultation with the private schools, and that consultation consists of basically just a discussion of here's the equitable services that are available to you. So while we have to provide allocations to them, we cannot provide any funding directly to them. So what that means is if we are, for example, providing tutoring, which is what we provide through Title I, it has to be through a third party, which you've seen in the last board meeting, the one-on-one learning contract. That is so that we can provide tutoring to those private schools. So the actual ESSER grant provided a lot more latitude with items that they could purchase. So in this case, they're purchasing things like technology or safety supplies. And the way it works with equitable services to private schools, anything like the consumable things obviously are used, but something like a technology that we provide, it belongs to the district, and the allocation that's spent on technology, they will receive it for the 2 years of the grant, but all of that comes back to the district at the end of 2 years. So the answer to why are we providing to private schools is because it's required by law.
And just to follow up on that same item, please supply additional information about this program. Why does the attachment address 2018, 2019, and 2019-2020 funds?
So we had the contract for one-on-one learning the amendment for last time, and this time I believe it should be the contract for the new school year. So with some of the funding, such as Title I, the carryover for the following year. There were some funds that they didn't expend, so there was a carryover contract to cover for the summer, and then we should have a new contract for this next year. And one-on-one is the services specifically for Title I.
Okay.
Okay, so Ms. Jordan has a question.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions today. I know we had this whole conversation because I remember speaking about this and wondering why we were doing this. And I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it. So that now I see it came back again. But my question is, so the tutoring services that are going to be offering because we have to, it's required, to the charter schools, are we offering it to our students at our schools free? Because we know that these kids have lost a lot, over these months. And, that to me is, and I keep speaking to a lot of teachers and they're asking about, are we going to have tutoring? And actually a lot of them are talking about possibly tutoring, because we know that the kids are going to have that gap and trying to catch them all up.
Absolutely. It's as far as tutoring at the schools, there are multiple sources of funds that are used for tutoring at schools. So, for example, the new ESSER grant that you'll see coming that can provide for it, geared was specifically for summer school and some tutoring after school at the start of the school year. So it's just how do we write the grant and what are we providing with the grants? In this case, with the allocation to the private schools, because we can't pay their staff, we can't give money to private schools, we have to allocate services. So that's why we use a contract specifically with one-to-one.
So the tutors for the district would be our paid staff employees or outside sources?
Typically it's with tutoring at schools, it's you want to use your staff. And honestly, the private schools would prefer to use their own staff, but not, so they have to be hired by one-on-one because we cannot give funds to private schools.
Got you. And I just want to say too, I think your department is fabulous. And I appreciate all the hard work that they do in finding all these grants. That is something for us. So thank you.
Great.
Amy's next to me, and appreciating the grants is too, as well.
Okay. So if we're good, we'll go on to the next question. This is E6, approval of the 2020-2021 Enhanced Instructional Opportunities for Recently Arrived Immigrant Students and Youth Grant. Question is this a new grant? And if not, how and where has the district used funds in the past?
This is not a new grant. It falls under the Title III, and it's the grant that provides support and supplemental services for our students that are in the country less than 3 years, and provide things like Rosetta Stone and other supplies and materials for these students. So it's not new, and we're continuing to do the same program as we've done in the past.
Okay, don't see any hands, so approval of the next one is E10, approval of the Magnet Schools Assistance Program grant. Question is, I only see James Stevens and South Fort Myers High School mentioned in the grant. Does the DHS, Dunbar High School, loses its magnet school status?
So this is an application for a magnet grant. It doesn't affect anything that we're currently doing. It's simply trying to add additional magnet schools. And in a selection of schools, we met with Dominic, and there's criteria on opportunity zone, on, things, minority isolated groups. So we have to follow all the criteria. Let me just say that this magnet grant, they're only giving, I believe, 7 to 9 in the country. So it's a long shot for us, but you can get what you don't apply for. So it is a $9 million grant, and we're hopeful to get it. But again, we felt that we'll go ahead and apply this year, because if we don't get it, they will give us feedback. And next year's when there's an opportunity for more of the magnet grants. But the grant does not affect any other magnet programs.
Okay.
Ms. Gittens has a question. Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Actually, I wasn't quick enough on the draw. It was on my other question. But just briefly then on the enhanced instructional opportunity, that particular grant. As we continue to increase the minority and the like the Hispanic student population and all of that, how does that affect the grant? If it's something we've done all along, as we increase, do we increase our ask when we do the grant, or is it just this is the way it is? And does that make sense?
Well, I can tell you that there are specific requirements, a lot of requirements as to here's the points on how you can attain the grant. So we try to, and we're fortunate that we have Terry Kinsey, who's done magnet grants for years, and she's actually, works on those 3 schools that are magnet schools on that grant. She wrote the grant, and I'm sure she could provide more information, but we provided. What she did is looked at how do we maximize the number of points so that we have the best opportunity of getting the grant. And that I can tell you, it took about 2 months worth of work. It was about 140 pages. It took working through Zoom with those schools and big cohorts of people. And so it's a lot of work. And they did everything following the guidelines. She was actually just watching the presentation that was done prior to the questions here, and was very interested in some of that information, because that'll help us in the future with opportunities at new magnet grants.
Awesome. And I just want to say too, thank you so much, especially in the times that we are having to be so challenged. I can imagine you guys are turning over rocks to find grants. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Adkins?
All right, next is E11, approval of the CSP COVID-19 2020-2021 grant, the Island School. The question is, please explain the COVID-19 grants versus CARES Act funding.
So we actually have 8 referred to as COVID-19 CSP grants. I'm not sure why they used a different name. I believe they're still involved with CARES. When they came out, typically there is a charter school planning grant or CSP grant that comes out for, or is not, schools have an opportunity when they're opening. With the COVID-19 grants, they gave additional opportunities for all charter schools across the state to apply for, I believe it was a $10 million allocation. And the way they are funding those is based on the Title I status or the number of students that are at risk. So it's a competitive grant. We have 8 schools that applied. We did not write their grant. They have to go through the LEA. And so they submit to us and we review. And we also put in indirect costs, which is an administrative fee for oversight of their grants. We currently have 1 school that is working on a CSP grant, but these 8, we'll see whether, we don't know which ones will go through. We're just the facilitator of, we have to submit it for them as required by the grant.
Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'll go on to the next one. E19, approval to modify the 2020-21 instructional calendar for the Charter School USA group. Question is, how is the charter school calendar different from the regular school calendar?
So the charter schools were all scheduled as part of their charter. They should be following our calendar, and they were scheduled to do that. And when we made this calendar change to the 31st, that following day, I received, or within a few days, I received a request from the person that oversees Charter Schools USA for the state, and they requested that they would like to modify the calendar to August 24th. And there were a couple reasons for that. The Charter Schools USA group locally has 6 schools, but across the state have 60 plus schools. And so they wanted all their schools on the same start date. But I think it really boiled down to they want to minimize the hardship that it creates for their staff in having to wait further for a paycheck. So by starting on August 24th, their teachers are starting, I believe, on August 10th. And so they'll have 10 days to prepare. They don't feel like they need 15 days. And then it would also create a hardship at the end of the year in paying staff. So the actual days of difference, they initially had changed their calendar to have the quarter, a week earlier and those kinds of things. It created a little bit of difficulty with the technology aspect of it, with reporting. So I worked with the spokesperson for their group and said, let's put in for just the 5 days early, but keep all of your reporting dates, your quarter dates, all of that the same, so that it doesn't create a difficulty with reports and so forth. So the difference in dates is just 5 days early, beginning of the year, ending 5 days early.
All right, and just one last item for Ms. Kennedy that I see. Are there any of the Title I or Title III grants new? And then I know Ms. Fisher had a question, I think, for you as well.
So the Title I and Title III, they're just as they have been in previous years. The only outstanding title grant that's a repeated grant that we have every year that hasn't been submitted is Title IV, and they made an extension on the Title IV. And we have submitted ESSER, but we're still working on some of the changes because we're waiting on some things from private schools. So probably the next board meeting will be bringing ESSER to you. And now we're researching new ones.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And my question was answered by an answer to someone else's question, so thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will move on then. Our next series of questions come for the Division of Operations, I consent. So this would be I3, approval of the expenditures with Trapeze Software Group for TripSpark. And I know that the question here is, please explain the Trapeze software. So Dr. Savage.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to answer that question. The Trapeze software is the transportation routing software, but it is also the platform for MapNet, VEO Now, and the Where's the Bus app. So all of that is built off of that platform. The MapNet web is a tool that's used by the schools and parents to determine bus stop times and locations. It also gives schools additional transportation information for their students. VEO Now is the GPS software for the entire fleet. It allows us to monitor in real time, as well as all the other pieces that are afforded by the GPS side of it. The Where's the Bus app is a resource for the parents to track their child's bus to the stop. So that's what this is engaged with Trapeze, that company.
Okay, and I believe that was the last question that had to do with the agenda. I think I know there were some other questions that the staff was researching, and we will try to get those answers in the board weekly update or early next week. So is there anything else?
I don't see any other hands at this time, Dr. Atkins.
Okay. Then if that's the case, then we can go on to the next item on the agenda, which would be our whistleblower vendor. I know I saw Frederick Ross on the line earlier, so I know Mr. Ross is going to present with Dr. Desamores.
Thank you. Dr. Atkins, may I just ask the board members, it is a little after 2, we're halfway through. Does anyone need a break? Yes, let's take a 5-minute break, please.
Okay, all righty.
resume our meeting with the whistleblower vendor update. Dr. Atkins?
All right, again, we will turn it over to Mr. Ross, who will give us our whistleblower update. So, Mr. Ross, good to see you.
Yes, good to see you too. Good to be seen. Thank you. Good afternoon to the board, to Dr. Atkins, to Bruno. So here today, following up on my previous presentation to the board regarding the whistleblower hotline and looking for basically bringing back the recommendation that we previously did, and also the additional tasks that were requested by the board. Daryl, if you could put that presentation up, please. The first two slides you'll see were from the previous presentation. So just a quick update that procurement took over the process of reaching out to receive quotes from whistleblower hotline vendors. We received 7 responses and validated that 5 were deemed as qualified, and then evaluated those with a lower price. Next slide. Again, update from last time with our recommendation. Daryl, you can go to the next slide. Our recommendation for the board to consider Lighthouse Services was the low quote for that request. They met the qualifications. They, definitely the service availability 24/7, the different languages, that case management system, a big thing, or a way to route these requests to the right person internally or externally. If outside firm is being used as well, also provide some customized training, but just in overall, they met the qualifications and they were the lowest bidder. So once we made that recommendation at that time, basically you requested 3 things from us. Number 1, you wanted us to consult with RSM on the procurement process and the selection of this vendor. Second, check the vendor's references. And thirdly, invite the vendor for a presentation and a demo of the system, which we have done. Derek, you can go to the next slide. Firstly, just verbally, the meeting with RSM, they understood our procurement process and agreed with our justification for choosing Lighthouse Services. They also gave feedback that they had worked with Lighthouse Services with other clients and did not see any issues. We checked those references. We contacted 3 school district references from this client. And this is kind of a summary of the results. They all were using it for fraud hotline use. They felt like the strength was the ease of the implementation and the use. That's kind of what we heard. It was just user friendly. And even in the implementation stage, it was easy to set up. No issues in terms of weaknesses or areas of concern. And overall, they all gave a very satisfied rating and said they would select this vendor again. So what we would consider in procurement, a very successful and valuable reference responses to go on. And then lastly, we brought Lighthouse in actually via Zoom meeting for a presentation and demo of their case management system. That meeting was attended by business services and HR staffing. We went, kind of went through, definitely got a chance to ask any questions, were able to see the case management system and see some of the functionality of the system. And the team seemed to come away with the agreement that this would suffice. And we, as a team at Procurement Services, we feel like we've completed our role in the procurement process for this. And between the business services and the HR group, are ready to move forward and recommend Lighthouse Services for the hotline. And the next step would be for the HR and possibly legal staff sitting down with Lighthouse Services to begin the implementation stage, begin the mapping of how calls and responses will be routed. So that, again, we recommend Lighthouse Services, and I guess open up to any questions about the process.
Okay, Mr. Ross, at this time, I don't see any hands up or any questions. I have one question. What would be the timeline of the contract that you would recommend, and have the other districts that you talk to renewed contracts, or are they on a multi-year contract?
I'm looking through my reference data right now to see if that information is there. I don't have that information on the on whether renewed or not. But in terms of timeline, we can move as fast. The vendor is ready to go, and we can move as fast as kind of we like to move on this. Like I said, it would just be a matter of establishing that meeting to get the implementation and the routing done. And it's a pretty user-friendly tool that could quickly be implemented and begin usage. So it's really kind of up to us.
Great, thank you.
Another question in terms of contract, definitely a year contract. I will propose a year contract with 1 year renewals options. So that will give us the flexibility. If things do not work out right, we have those options.
Okay, thank you for that. And now I do see two more hands, Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Ross. Like the hairdo. So it's kind of going along with what Ms. Fisher said about when to start. And I think that's my biggest thing. We get this underway because we're almost at a year to having started this conversation. I know there was something about, I'm not sure of the details, about if something came in and it was fraud, waste, or abuse, and how that would be differentiated. I don't know if you or Ms. Bruno would be able to address that. And is that, and another thing, is that a holdup to us getting started?
So in terms of the vendor and the system, is really how we want it. I think that's how he communicated a lot. You know, we have the discretion to choose our routing processes and our customization for the system. So it's really up to us. You know, they have examples and experience of when a third party similar to RSM is part of the process, or if it's just internally legal and HR staff. So they're flexible to work with how we would like to work.
So are we talking that we could turn this around in 30 days if we chose to and decided and voted on it, or how is that?
Mr. Ross, I can't hear you.
I see Ms. Bruno's hand. I'll let her answer.
Yeah, yes. I was just about to recognize her, but I wanted to give you an opportunity first. Ms. Bruno.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So at this point, board members, I'm actually happy to report that yesterday we had a meeting with all of the members of the committee with regards to these policies, including the whistleblower policy and the waste, fraud, and abuse policy. It will be coming forward to you in September and then move forward with the rulemaking process. So I think that goes along as to when the hotline will actually become implemented is when we get these policies approved and passed, and then we'll be ready to go.
Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, and actually, I think Mr. Bruno answered my question. So, Mr. Bruno, you've been in on the conversations all along. And do you intend to be a member? Mr. Ross mentioned meetings about how exactly it will be implemented in the district. Will you be a part of those? That's what I wanted to assure, that our board attorney was part of all of the meetings having to do with this.
So with regards to the policies, I have been a part of all of those policies and the drafting of those policies with the committee members. So with regards to the implementation of the actual hotline, if I am invited to attend, I will be in attendance for that as well.
Well, I would like to state for the record that I feel like our board attorney needs to be invited to attend so that she has a broad picture of this, because I know sometimes if you get things piecemeal, you don't have the complete understanding that you would if you're in for the whole broad picture. So I'm hoping that our board attorney is a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Did you have any more comments, Ms. Bruno?
No, I would just commend staff on working on these policies, because it's something that's been there for a long time, and it's pretty exciting that at this point all of us are on the same page and we have a good set of policies that will be coming forward to the board. There are 4 different policies coming to the board, so it's a good job. So congratulations to all, and hopefully everyone will be satisfied with what it is. It was a lot of hard work.
Great. Thank you all. We really appreciate that. Mr. Ross, did you have something else in conclusion?
Yes, I just wanted to answer the question. I put up like a proposal, and they indicated that they could have a setup of the line and ready to in 1 week. So they have a real quick implementation. I think really the main thing is getting into the meeting with the district and getting that initial implementation meeting going.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I don't see any other hands. I'll turn it back over first to Dr. Atkins, and we'll move on to our Master Board training update.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and we will certainly be inclusive of Ms. Bruno moving forward with the implementation of the whistleblower hotline. So having said that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Cindy, who can take us through our Master Board training update. Cindy McClung.
Thank you, Dr. Atkins. Good afternoon, board members. Nice to see everyone today. As you know, on Wednesday, the last session of the Master Board training was completed at the foundation. And since not all board members were able to attend, the members who were there asked that we make sure that the members who were not in attendance were brought up to date on the discussion that took place there. So the discussion really was more of a self-reflection. The day was spent in mainly asking and answering questions, thinking about roles within the board, and how started out with asking each member, just why did you run to be a board member, and are your reasons the same now as they were then? And how do you feel you have, where do you feel you've been successful? Where are some things, areas that you wish that you could work on? And then there was a culmination of the day where the board members were asked to consider what they believe the characteristics are of an ideal board. And as they worked through that, they came up with a statement, and you have that document. And if Mr. Eldon would bring that up, we'll take a quick look at it. This was the main thing that board members wanted to share. So the characteristics of an ideal board. So what we'd like to do today is to take a quick look at that and discuss very briefly each of those characteristics and make sure that there's a common understanding around those. And then as a board, make a decision if the board is committed to these and feels that these characteristics are important in moving forward and able to move the district forward. So we'll start out with the very first one. It says, the ideal board is a team that works together for a common purpose. The board is ethical. I believe that one's pretty self-explanatory, and there was some discussion around the importance of that, obviously. The second one demonstrates courageous advocacy for the district. And this came about from a lot of discussion looking at what does it mean to advocate for the district, and talking about making sure that board members were able to get out and speak with stakeholders and feel comfortable talking about the different priorities of the district and advocating for those priorities moving forward. And also feeling that, that you knew the whole story and were able to tell that story. Are there any questions around that one? Mrs. Vaughn.
Why is the word courageous necessary?
Well, as the discussion went on, said sometimes it's hard to take a stand on things, and I think that's where that word courageous came from. When you look at the last 3 months, some of the decisions that the board has made have not necessarily been popular with everyone. We have a very divided community right now when it comes to something like masks, for example. And so it was, taking that stand and being courageous and speaking up for what the board believes is the right decision for children. And if any of the other board members would like to add to that, that was my understanding.
I see Ms. Gittens has her hand up also.
Yes, I agree with being an advocate and being courageous to do that. Part of that has to be, and I always go back to communication, because we have to make sure that we all have all of the information. And the other caveat to that is, we do represent our districts. And so we do have to be able to answer questions or represent kind of the two-way street. We represent to the districts what information is coming from the district as a whole, and then in turn represent the community back to the district. And I think somehow we need to make sure we understand that when we are bringing back from the community information, it is not an affront against the district saying we do not agree with the statement. It is communication and information that is being shared that could be beneficial to all.
Absolutely. And you might have noticed at the bottom of this document, there's a section that says processes to consider during our protocol review, and communications or communication plan in general was one of those. We've talked about that several times in terms of making sure that the board had a good plan in place for communicating with and hearing from stakeholders. So we will certainly discuss that more during that August 25th workshop.
Thank you. Mrs. Morgan.
I decided to lower my hand. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Kwan, go ahead.
All right. So the next one is focused on the business of the district. And that was very clear about just, when you are working together as a board, staying focused on the strategic plan, staying focused on what is best for the students within the district, and working on that business as a group together. And then the next one leads straight from that in being committed to that plan, making sure that you understand the things that are brought before you, that you are committed to the strategic plan and to moving forward the business of the district. The next one was listening to understand, and that comes straight from Covey, but it was saying the discussion was around, and there was a lot of self-reflection in that as well. Some people saying, I try really hard to listen, but sometimes I find that I'm thinking of an answer before I've heard the whole discussion, or I'm tired and I'm having a hard time really understanding what the person's saying. So that's where that came from, really making that effort to listen, to understand when all parties are speaking. Demonstrates respect for all. Again, that's pretty self-explanatory. Prepared and engaged, also pretty self-explanatory, making sure that you've done your homework and that you know what's coming before the board, you're engaged in the discussions, and you're engaged with the activities related to the strategic plan. Positively represents the district and the community. This is one that had a lot of discussion as well, because the idea was that positively doesn't necessarily mean that you're always putting the district and saying that everything is great and rosy, and someone was talking about, the Pollyanna. It's not that everything is wonderful. It's understanding where the district stands and being able to explain that in a positive manner and saying, yes, we have a problem. We're aware of that problem. Here's what we're doing to fix it. There was even some discussion of, the sky's falling, but but now we know the sky's falling. We're going to take care of it. So this was about being able to speak with stakeholders and know the facts and speak to the facts and be able to answer questions. Any questions around that one?
I think we have a hand from Ms. Vaughn.
Yes, and I wasn't there yesterday. My question or comment actually is that when we look at these things, are we meant to be looking at them as the board, the team, the board, that group, or are we meant to be looking at this as individuals? Because it seems to me some of these things seem more aimed or focused on individuals. So I'm just curious on that, like keep individual comments concise, is prepared and engaged. I mean, we can look at it, the board as a whole, but it seems to me that several of these perhaps are more pertinent to individual members, and maybe we're focused that way.
I see it as both, because the team itself is made up of individual members. So if the board as a whole is to be prepared and engaged, then that means that each individual member also needs to be prepared and engaged. The same thing with the comments. One of the discussions was around board meetings and trying to to honor people's time. And that, sometimes we tend to run over, and how can we work on that? And one of the discussions was, sometimes we hear the same thing repeated. So if we could be concise and say things once rather than 3 or 4 times, then that would help us honor people's time. And it would also help us listen to understand, because we wouldn't be hearing things over and over. So I know that's a long answer to that question, but I don't
No, I understand, because I understand how it can apply to both, but I think that it seems to be more focused toward individuals in some of the bullet points. So that was my comment.
Thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. And Ms. Vaughn, thank you for what you said. When we were speaking about our own personal selves, how we, like myself, how I felt as an individual, what I can do better. And same with the other ones who were there, was not pertaining to other board members, but as a whole, what is it that we can do? And so it is, yes, it's individual, but it also is as a team, all of us collectively, because we are the team. So it was not ever put out to speak about any individual person. It's what we all had to share about ourselves. I just wanted to put that out there, because I know some, were not there, but we thought it was important that we shared what we spoke about, because we are a team. So we shouldn't be allowing you to see what we, or have you see what we spoke about. So I just wanted to say that. And Melissa, sorry for your loss, and welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, were the items prioritized or, ranked in any way, or is it just the conglomerate? And is that something that, looking forward, you want to do?
They were not prioritized, with the one exception of is ethical. When that one came up, everyone said, put that at the top. So that went to the top, but nothing else was prioritized. Now that could be an activity if the board chose to do that later, certainly could do so.
Okay, and I have a question about that in a second, but I mean, for example, I believe that listens to understand is if ethical is first, listens to understand has got to be up there, because if you can't, demonstrate respect, or you can't commit to the plan if you don't listen to everyone and get it all concretized in your head before you speak. And then can you then go any deeper into the ethical so that we understand what And if you can't, that's okay, but I'm just saying under, explaining it a little bit better.
No, honestly, there was not a lot of discussion around that. That was one that everyone just said, yes, we need to be ethical. We need to be people that our community can trust. We need to be honest with each other and with the community, but it wasn't a big discussion around the definition of that. And actually, there was a lot of discussion around the definition of some of the others, but that one, everyone kind of seemed to have the same idea, and there wasn't much discussion. And let me back up just a minute and tell you the process that was used, because that was a good question about where these ranked. The board members were asked by the facilitator to write down on individual Post-it notes characteristics. What did they think made up an ideal board? And then it was sort of like an affinity diagram, but we just brought them up one at a time. So people would say one that they had, and we posted that. And if anyone else had the same one or something similar, we brought them up together and grouped them, and then derived the list from that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Patrica, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to talk about the process, but Ms. McClung did that for me, so we're good.
Oh, okay. And I was just going to comment on the ethical part. We are mandated to take ethics training annually. And so I think partly because of that, and the fact that that is a basic characteristic that is expected of us, I think that's why that kind of rose to the top.
Thank you. If there are no more questions on that, I'll move on to the next item. And this one did generate quite a bit of discussion. It was utilizes contextual information, and then that information was described as data, looking at trends, looking at research to make decisions. And that conversation started with data-driven decision-making. And the feeling was, that's kind of hard and cold, and people don't always understand it, and it seems so black and white, when really it's not a black and white process at all, that there's a whole lot more involved. So there was a long discussion of, well, where do we get our data, and what are we really looking at, and where's the emotional piece of that come in, and how do we really make decisions, and making sure that we are making decisions in context, and that the data that we're looking at is in context. And again, over the last few months, I think that's become extremely important, because we get so much conflicting information. And so, we're looking to our health professionals to give us information, looking at where does that data come from. And then we're looking at our trends of, how have perceptions changed over time. Normally when we talk about this, we're talking about student achievement. But over the last few months, we've had to consider a whole lot more than just student achievement. It's what are we going to do to ensure that student achievement, and how are we going to put some really good plans in place to help that achievement happen. So this, I think, was probably the most discussed area as we talked about how to word that. Would any of the other board members like to add to that? Or any questions about that?
I don't see any hands.
Okay, then we'll move on.
That was my favorite. That was part of my favorite part of the entire afternoon, because that brought me to another place and made me realize that, because when people say data driven, that gives me goosebumps, and I'm much more likely to look at the people part of it and the emotional part of it, and so. It was really an aha for me that that's a piece that I need to work on. And I think that was what I identified as my part that I need to do to be a better team member, to really think about that and look at the contextual information that is included in the data. So I appreciated that part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we've already discussed the individual comments one, and then the last one was following protocols and processes. And there was a bit of discussion around how we do have board protocols, but they are not always followed, which led into a discussion of what things do we really need to look further into? If people aren't in agreement with them, then we need to come up with better processes. And those lists at the bottom were some of those processes. I really want to look at a communications process. We talked about having a common communication, like a PowerPoint, that so everyone had common information, and then being able to individualize that based upon your particular area of the strategic plan that you're talking about. We talked about having specific goals, outcomes, and evaluations for every board meeting, and making sure that those goals and outcomes have been met. A parking lot for a meeting, because there was some discussion that sometimes people will say, oh, I'd really like to discuss that further. Can we have a workshop on it? And then it may be brought back, but it may be later. So we talked about having a parking lot for every meeting, where at the end of the meeting, we go back and say, okay, so this was recommended as a workshop. How does the board as a whole feel? Do we need to get this on the agenda, on the schedule to have a workshop? Having a calendar and a timeline for specific topics. Like generally we have a specific time of year that you get updates on the budget. We have a specific time of year that you get updates on the strategic plan, but having a very clear calendar and timeline for those big topics. And then talking about the expectations around consent agenda polls. So rather than discuss those today, since we knew there was limited time, talked about putting that at the August 25th board meeting. So in preparation for that one, I will be sending out the current version of the protocols. I'll get that to you either this afternoon or Monday, and ask you to highlight any areas you want to bring up for discussion that we need to look at maybe altering those. So back to the list of the characteristics.
I'm sorry, Ms. McClung. May I have Ms. Jordan and Ms. Gittens with a hand raised.
Thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I just wanted to go back when you had said the utilizing contextual information. That one kind of like hit home with me after watching Ms. Gittens and Ms. Patrica having their conversation. And so how we perceive data, information versus trend, and human beings versus a number, I think that conversation was really good for all of us to have. As Ms. Fisher said, that was one of the best conversations that we did have. But that did come from, watching the two of you and the way of your understandings of what that looks like. So I just wanted to share that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Jordan, for that comment. And kind of going back to something Ms. McClung said earlier, when you were describing, I'm not sure which one of the points, but you mentioned the discussion was about repeating things and, mentioning things once and kind of going on. And I just wanted for the record to say that part of that has to do with that listening to understand, because if someone feels like they have not been heard, then they will continue to speak until they are heard. So a lot of times it's not so much just, repeating this or repeating that. There are ways to know that you have been heard. And one of the things we as a board have to work on is that when it's like the nonverbal or the unspoken agreement or understanding, that if someone says something, and I've mentioned before that if we say, okay, and now the next item on the agenda is, it gives the impression that, okay, you said that, now let's just keep on going. And I know I tried to show that when I was chair and I would talk about the people that came to make public comment, that it's a very important thing to make people to understand and feel like they have been heard. So I just wanted to put that on record. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And also, let me clarify that it wasn't necessarily one person repeating the same thing over and over, that discussion went around not just people saying the same thing they had said, but also sometime during comments that if people have been to the same event, that if they could just say, like I was there as well, and maybe add one more thing to it, but not repeat the whole thing that had been said. So it wasn't a discussion of, oh, we're tired of hearing one person speak or about anyone. It was a discussion of how can we stay and on time and respect people's time and increase that listening to be heard. So thank you for those comments. Any other questions before we move on with it? Okay. So the desire of the group that was there the other day was to have a commitment from each member that was there to work to follow these characteristics of an ideal board in order to better further the goals of the district. So since not everyone was there during that time, you can go ahead and take it down, Mr. Alden. Thank you. Since not everyone was there at that time, we wanted to bring it back to the whole group and get a consensus around, do you agree that these are characteristics that are good for the board to follow? And as a team, are you committed to following these guidelines for an ideal board? Okay. Are there questions or comments? And if not, we can do a quick thumbs up if you're in agreement and consensus that you believe these are good ideals and are willing to follow those.
Thank you, Ms. McClung. I do have a hand, Ms. Gittens.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to clarify then is how this is different from commitments that we have already made as a board. Is this replacing anything? Is this new? Is this going forward from here on out? Because I know we have kind of come up with items similar before.
So if I may,
Yes, please.
my impression at the conclusion of Wednesday's meeting was that this is a moving forward commitment, that this is a reinforcement. We're at this point now, and in order to move forward and to strengthen the performance of our governance team, we came up with these items as potential characteristics that we need to work on. And we went around and each one of us identified something that was really more personal to ourselves, and we were able to, like I said, mine, the whole data-driven thing is really my weakness. And like I said to Mrs. Morgan, that's your strength. You just automatically do that. And so when I listen to try to understand the things that she says, it's a little bit of a foreign language to me sometimes, but it has been very helpful to me in growing in the time that we've had to work together on the board. So I just wanted to explain it from that perspective, but this is let's move forward. And so, Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I just want to clarify what we're what exactly are we giving consensus on? Is it a general approval of the list? Is it a more, what are we going to be doing officially with the list? That's before I thumbs up, thumbs down.
So this list was generated through conversation and through some of the activities that were provided by the facilitator. And I think we agree that the ones that were present agreed that these were items that we agree are characteristics of an ideal board and things that we will work on individually if necessary to carry things forward, because we have work of this district to be done. And we do, we need to work as a team in order to accomplish what our goals are, and the vision, and also our strategic plan. And we did talk a little bit about how we each have a piece of the strategic plan that we have personally committed to. And I took this to mean that we'll continue to do that so that we will be focused on what our job really is.
No, and I'm sorry, I understand all that. What I'm asking is when Ms. McClung asked for thumbs up, thumbs down, what exactly is she asking for a general yeah, I agree, those are good goals, or we're going to publish these and put them on a poster in the boardroom. I mean, what exactly are we voting on? Or
Well, I haven't heard anything about publishing them, but.
no, I'm just trying to get
I understand.
to crazy extremes, but
No,
just to illustrate. No, I understand all of it, but when we give a thumbs up, what are we saying we're doing with this list? And are we just talking about the top part, or are we also talking about the parking lot and all those other things as well? It just wasn't clear, and I'm not going to put thumbs up or thumbs down until I'm clear on what we're doing here.
Okay, let me see if I can
Thank you.
clarify.
And no insult. I just need to be clear.
None taken at all. Let me clarify. My understanding was that as the final part of the master board training, this was generated as you've had this, I believe it was 4 sessions of training. And as a master board, what are some of those ideals that you are committed to working toward in order to move forward the business of your district? So I see it more as a recommitment, not something brand new. Certainly all of these items have been discussed before. And we're talking about the bulleted points under the ideal board, not those other things at the bottom that would be looked at further on. So basically it's just do you agree that these are worthwhile ideals to pursue and agree to personally work to meet those?
Okay, and that's all that clarification, because I understand everything else. Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome. Mrs.
Thank
Morgan,
you.
I see your hand.
And yeah, I thought I saw Miss Morgan and Miss Jordan.
You did, but I put my hand down because Cindy was given the information. And it isn't about, raising your thumbs up, thumbs down. We all know what we have to do. These are things that we seen as being very positive and helping us to move forward as a unit, as a whole. So regardless if we put our thumbs up or down, we all know what we need to do. We're sharing this information with you all because we felt that it was important for us to do that.
And thank you. I was going to say the same thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you. So I actually, we have already agreed to this in the past, and I am committed to this. I committed to this 4 years ago, and because it was a commitment I made. But what happens when we get off track? Because that's what's happened, and because somebody doesn't quite agree or is like-minded and doesn't see those things that the others might be seeing. We're supposed to be helping each other along, not singling each other out. And so that, I think, is where we went off our paths, because as a board. And so it's important that we all bring each other along. And like, I feel I always respect everyone, but I'll be honest, I don't feel like I was respected. And so no one wanted to bring me along. No one wanted to hear my side. So it's really important that, so for me, when Debbie and Betsy and Gwen came along and was elected and voted in, that's been a real, honestly, has been great, because I think we worked harder to bringing them along. So, and I think that's really important. I feel like that anyways, just even just the meeting that we have where the agenda review, that alone was an awesome thing in place to bring everybody along with the agenda, especially when you're new. So, I believe we can get there. So I just think that we all just need to respect everyone's ideas, and everyone has different ideas, and we have to embrace that. So it's important to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. And absolutely, I believe each of you has certainly agreed to these when you were elected. And as I said, I think this is more of a recommitment, just bringing to the attention again that these are the ideals that you aspired to, and that you're just making a recommitment to work toward those, which may not require consensus. Maybe the discussion is all that was needed. Mrs. Fisher, I'll defer to you.
Okay, so then, and, you know, if you're okay with that, Cindy, I think that, the lawn people are here again. This is an agreement that we have made before. This is just a revisit to carry us forward and to complete our master board training. And so I'm fine with just this discussion. I think it was valuable and everybody had their input. So if there are no other comments, I'll return this back to you.
Thank you. Then I have completed everything I had to say. So thank you for your time and for the discussion. I appreciate it and look forward to the next time.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is good of the order. So if there is, this time I think we'll start with Ms. Morgan and work backwards. Ms. Morgan, do you have anything for good of the order? No. Ms. Vaughn?
These are like our comments too, right?
Yes, this is it.
Oh, okay. Because what I wanted to do was to update the board a little bit about the reusable mask fund drive. We are making great progress. I know that I've had a couple email conversations earlier today with Adam Malloy, and thank you to my board colleagues, those of you who were able to come up with some businesses or organizations in your areas or that you personally knew that might be collection sites for these. And if you can come up with these, if you can get those to him by noon on Monday, as I said in my email, that would be great. And he and I and Irma Lancaster were all meeting on Wednesday early afternoon to finalize things. I'm looking forward to a huge collection effort to benefit our students. And I'm absolutely going to keep everybody informed on all of it. But just to let you know, this is where we are. We've made great progress, had great cooperation with board members. Mr. Jared Eady also supplied some community sites for Mr. Malloy, and so we're moving along. We're in and also I've been in contact, as has Mr. Malloy, with the foundation because they are masters at doing collections, and so if any of you have any additional suggestions, ideas, pass them along to Mr. Malloy, and we will be needing to finalize and get those bins and boxes out to the collection sites to kick off in a week from this Monday on the 18th. So that's what I've been working on, and we're all really excited about doing this. Oh, I have a goal of 50,000. Ambitious, but doable. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vaughn. That's an amazing project, and I'm working with a couple of local businesses waiting for responses on those myself, so thank you. And next is Ms. Gittens.
Thank you. I thought I was later, but anyway, just a couple of quick things. On the committee, the Diversity and Racism Initiative, that myself and Ms. Patrica are on. The one update, we have spoken about some of the things we want to do in the direction, and I have spoken with Adam Malloy, and he and Jared Eady are working on helping us with the logistics as to locations, et cetera. And we should be hearing back from them very soon, and then moving forward, and we'll keep you all posted on that. Many of you know that I do a lot on social media, trying to create a presence in not only my community, but in the East Zone, and helping people that may not understand what some of the things that are going on. And I have been doing a Facebook Live for quite a few months now. And I spoke to Ms. Fisher about it. I've also spoken to Ms. Jordan, and Ms. Jordan has started one as well, and congrats on that. And so I would like to have the opportunity, maybe at a workshop, to just talk about, what I'm doing with it and how it's working. And I've always had questions from the community when I do the Facebook Live. Are there any other board members doing this? And I'm able to say that Ms. Jordan is. I was thinking, and especially talking with Ms. Fisher about it, that perhaps it's something, if you feel comfortable, that everyone might be able to, do some type of social media presence. And Ms. Bruno, don't get nervous. Everybody will make sure we maintain our sunshine policies and all that. There's just a few little nuances to it that makes it easier that I'd like to share with you. And so I'm not sure how you want to have me do it at a workshop and talk about what I have done and the success or failures of it, and to go from there. So I'm throwing that out as a question.
And thank you, Ms. Gittens. I asked Ms. Gittens if she could give me a lesson on how to do that, because I think it's a great idea to connect with the community. And I went on and looked at Ms. Jordan's and Ms. Gittens' Facebook live casts last night, and I saw that, Ms. Gittens, you had like 630 some odd views, which I think is really pretty good for a Thursday evening. So I would like to try to use that as a way of staying connected with my community. And it certainly seems a lot less arduous than driving around from place to place and putting your mask on. So I think it's a great idea, and this is 2020, and I think that our connections with the community are so important. So I wanted to thank you both for doing that. You're kind of like trailblazers to me. So thank you. And Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, rather than try to do it in a workshop, maybe if we would ask Ms. Lancaster to sit with each of us individually who'd like to do it. I think that would be helpful, because I know that I am not in the same place as some of the other board members are with respect to social media. So I would prefer to do sort of a one-on-one with staff. And that way, I think working through staff, we make certain that there's a consistency in what we are using social media for as board members and what we're representing. So that's my comment. Thank you. And I think it's a great idea, but I need a lot more hand-holding than a workshop.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that comment. Ms. Bruno?
So whenever these one-on-ones or however the board decides to move forward, I would like to be involved in that, because the hair on my skin is standing up a little bit. I do have concerns, and there's always some traps with regards to social media and public officials, with regards to public records, sunshine, public forum, discussion. So I definitely would like to be a part of that so I can give you proper legal counsel.
Thank you so much for that. I didn't know if you were related to my mom. Okay, Ms. Gittens?
Yes, and I thank you, Ms. Morgan and Ms. Bruno, for that. The things that I would share with you is not so much telling you the ins and outs of how to do this or how to do that. Just some of the things I've been doing it for a while, and to kind of give my pitfalls and some of the things that might help you to start out in a better place. I did not have assistance when I started it, and there are a couple of things that I can share, and I have worked with Ms. Bruno to make sure that I stay out of trouble. So that was the only thing, and perhaps I can just share something at the end of a meeting or something to tell you what. So
Great, thank you. Okay, moving right on to Ms. Jordan for good of the order.
Thank you. And I am certainly amateur hour when I'm doing it. So I always apologize ahead of time. And I always let them know that I'm speaking for me as an individual person. So I get that right out. But I think that it has been, and I apologize for that. I think it has been good for me with this. So I'm going to continue to do it until I become a professional. But the only thing I really wanted to share was, I know I had sent out a request for letters for Franklin Park, and there was a little bit of confusion. We were at, I was at a meeting, the community meeting for Franklin Park, and we were asked they're working right along with the Castaldo report and trying to get everything together, to bring back from the state. But they thought it would be a good idea to have community input as well. Why should Franklin Park, have a complete tear down? What is the reason that school is so important to the community? Just things like that. And so some of the teachers, Joy Hunter and some of the other teachers went out into the community to get some letters, and I had secured some letters from our city council, which, they're alumni of Franklin Park, 30, 45 years ago. So to them, that school means a lot. So to have them, write letters on the behalf of the district and the school of the importance of that. So that's why I had sent it to you all, because I felt like I should, give you the opportunity, if you so choose to, have written a letter. That is why I sent you the talking points, and the talking points were what we had received from the architect. I didn't add all the other thank you, hi, how are you, all that in between, which I probably should have just copied and pasted. I just deleted all that other nonsense so you didn't have to go through that to get to the talking points. But we do have quite a few letters, thanks to the hard work of the people of Franklin Park and the community of that area, and our city council and representatives. So I think that's it's good. They're rallying around to make sure that we have what we need.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. And maybe if I can just ask Ms. Bruno to weigh in on this, but we've already talked about this, and we know that the board supports it. Is this something that would be appropriate to have a letter on official stationery from the board?
If the board chooses to do that as a collective body, they can. I do remember that Ms. Jordan was asking for individual letters on a personal basis. So I think it just depends on what the board would like to do.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Gittens, I'm going to come back to you just for a minute, but we have a couple more members to entertain. Can you unmute?
I'm not muted. You said you would come back to me, right?
Oh, no.
She didn't call anybody.
Regarding this topic is why I raised my hand.
Okay.
Okay, I was a little confused about it as to, are we soliciting to make the change through DOE? And how does that fit in what plans or whatever that we have already discussed for this project through the board? That's
No, it did not, Ms. Gittens. All it did was just showed, it seems like everything takes forever when it goes up there to the state. So we're just trying to rally around what we're already doing. And, so if you have the community involvement and city council.
And I think she's frozen.
I think we lost you, Ms. Jordan.
So can Dr. Atkins weigh in on, his thoughts on this, or?
Do you want to weigh in now on this?
I can try. I mean, I think what she's looking for is just get letters of support from the board, supporting what we're trying to do right now with Franklin Park. I think that was just that simple.
Right, and I guess my question was, would that be better, would the purpose be better served if we sent a letter on behalf of the entire board officially or individually, personally?
Let me recognize Dr. Savage. I think he may be able to, he's a little bit closer to the process than I am.
Thank you, Dr. Savage.
Why, thank you. We actually have a little bit of information coming in your weekly board update relative to this as well. So I'm sure, we've lost Ms. Jordan for a minute, but she's actually participated in that process. Essentially, the Castoldi issue we ran into was they would not approve a full tear down at the site based on pure educational pieces. And so because of this community grant, the critical role we anticipate this facility playing, that taking a community approach after they talked to two different DOE representatives, one kind of actually suggested this approach, that this would be a preferred way. We actually had already significant community support as we were able to get that grant in the first place. We had to have letters of support from a variety of folks, including Lee Health, including United Way, and others. And so this is just kind of piggybacking on that to demonstrate the role that this school site, it's in a perfect area from a flood sheltering standpoint. We don't typically make our elementary schools into these kind of unique situations. So it's just a very unique opportunity with this building, and it's just one way of getting support. Now, in terms of whether a board letter, I would have to get back to you on that. Kathy and Dominic have been really in the weeds on this, so I would think they would have asked me to request that if that was something that we would want. I don't see why that would hurt, but I think it's more about trying to show that there are entities outside of the school district that are truly invested in this as well. So that would be my reaction to it. We do have information in your weekly board, but we'll continue to engage with Ms. Jordan and provide more information and follow up on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Savage. Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, well, of course, I support the complete rebuild. I think all of us do. And thank you, Ms. Jordan, for forwarding what you did. And I was one of the people that was confused because, frankly, it would have been helpful to me to have gotten before today, or the hint of it yesterday, exactly what the situation was, and that we were, or at least the city of Fort Myers was initiating a grassroots campaign, and maybe moving forward when we have more time. I wondered how effective something like that kind of a campaign would actually be on this process. It's interesting, Dr. Savage, that you said there were actually people that advised that that might be another way to open the doors. So I'm looking forward to seeing the updates and, all the information. I mean, because I'm willing to do anything I can, either as a board member, community member, in any of that, but I want to make sure that my efforts will be actually heard and, kind of know what's already been done, which I was unfamiliar with.
If I may respond, and I apologize if I'm not clear on this. This is the Franklin Park project has been ongoing for quite some time.
Right.
There have been numerous updates to this effect. The issue is strictly about approval on that site. I think as a school district, we are doing everything that we can to prove to the state that we deserve this latitude within the age of the various buildings on that site. But where a change in strategy became apparent was actually at the behest of the Florida Department of Ed staff who approve these statewide. And so they get to see what other districts are doing. I mentioned to Kathy and Dominic that when I was up in Tallahassee, I was aware of other sites that seemed to get pretty broad approval because these are big topics. These community wraparound schools are a really big deal in the state legislature as well. And so I kind of explained to them that there's a few other districts that they could reach out to that I was aware of, like Orange County, for example, that were a little further along in this type of process. So I think once everyone kind of realized exactly what was in play, that's where the state person said, well, there's a different path you all can take that isn't typically one that school districts do. So that's just a recent development, but it's been an ongoing effort. I don't think at this time we would ask the board, I wouldn't ask you all at this point to have to go out and do anything dramatic other than the idea is the more broad community support we could get, the best. So specific entities, having letters of support similar to what we're able to obtain to be awarded this grant, that's a big part of it. But certainly we're not trying to hide the information from anyone. It's just a change in strategy that we think is going to be very beneficial to us.
No, and I probably wasn't clear. I know we've been updated all along. The only piece of information that I was unaware of was that there has, as you said, it's recent, the community push, which I think is excellent. And I hope since it was recommended that this is another way to open that door. And I guess you have to know those tricks, which is maybe fortunate or unfortunate, whatever way you look at it. But yeah, I would certainly love to know more information about what has already been done in the community and, the kinds of information that I learned about via Ms. Jordan's email yesterday. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So if I'm correct, we are finished with Ms. Jordan because I think we maybe lost her. And we're moving right on now to Mrs. Patrica.
Thank you. I have two things. Attorney Dupree-Bruno, do we have feedback yet on who will be attending in-person meetings, the in-person meeting on Tuesday? And if not, could we poll the board now? I'm having a heck of a hard time getting a religious leader to show up for the invocation.
Yeah, I would request a repoll because I've only gotten 3 emails responses.
Okay, so could we do, Madam Chair, could I ask for thumbs up if you're going to be physically present at the meeting on Tuesday?
Please. Yes, please. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dr. Atkins, 6. And Ms. Gittens?
Yeah, I did. And I know we saw some of the safety precautions that were being done, and we were told it was in process. If we could be updated on that as to exactly, I think someone showed there was plexiglass and there was that type of thing, but I would really like to know what all is going to be done.
So before we get to that, Attorney Dupree-Bruno, do those numbers indicate to you that we will have an open phone line?
So we have 6, Madam Chair, is that what you said? You counted 6?
No, well, I counted 5 board members and Dr. Atkins. Daryl, I don't know if you can get Miss Jordan on.
I believe that Miss Jordan will be attending, so you'll have
Okay.
a phone line.
Okay, that's
Okay,
all,
so-
that's all I needed. I just needed to know
Okay.
if we would have an open phone line for the invocation. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Atkins, would you like to address the safety measures during your comments?
Dr. Atkins, please unmute.
No, I wasn't talking. I gave you a thumbs up and said I would address it during.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't see you on
Okay,
my
I'm
screen.
sorry. Thank you.
All right, the second item I have is I was contacted yesterday by the ECCL. There's a car wash that's trying to build a building and a business on 41 at the entrance of the Vines community, where there's also a school bus stop. And the ECCL asked me to come and in front of the Estero Design Review Board to discuss safety issues surrounding the location of a business there. I have spoken with the Estero Council, and they are in agreement with me going to that meeting. I went through Dr. Atkins and asked Dr. Atkins to have staff provide me with talking points. I just wanted to let the board know that I will be attending that meeting next Wednesday. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patrica, and good luck with that. Okay, let's see. Ms. Giovanelli.
Hi, thank you for being patience with me. I had a funeral this morning, early this morning, but at 1 today, so thank you. Thank you. I actually don't have anything. I will watch the video recording what I missed earlier, but I didn't have anything for the agenda review, so I just thought I'd say that, and that's it. I was thinking there was something that we attended that, but my mind is a blank at this moment, so sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have no further comments, so I'll move on to Ms. Bruno.
I have no comments, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And then Dr. Atkins.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. A few things to cover. I'll start out with the boardroom update, and I'll ask our Chief of Staff, Ms. Stilwell, to address what they are doing in the boardroom. So.
Sorry about that, the mouse didn't want to work. So we're going to meet again on Tuesday just to finalize plans, but at this point what we have set up in the boardroom is on the dais itself, you all got a picture of the plastic panel that will be sitting in between each one of you. Those are the same panels that are going in our schools at the front office space. So you'll have that. It'll be the same setup for the computers and the microphones that you have now. We are going to move public comment more towards the back of the room, so there's social distance there, so that they won't be coming right up to the podiums that are close to where you look, folks. That you're sitting on the end. I think that's Mrs. Morgan and Kathy Bruno. So they won't be there. Latanya will stay in her area so that she can take minutes and all of that with Jen. We will be roping off sections of the boardroom itself, so people will be socially distanced in the audience. And we'll be opening up training room D so that there will be more space so people can actually social distance back there. We'll have hand sanitizer and masks available as people come in, because part of the visitor protocol, obviously, to our buildings is to wear masks. So those will be available for folks who are coming in and don't have one. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a question from Ms. Gittens.
Ms. Gittens?
Thank you, and thank you for all that you all are doing. Ms. Stilwell, what about the microphones that are used for the cleaning of the microphones or whatever that is used for public comment?
It will be a freestanding microphone, so there won't be a podium there, and we'll have wipes available. And we'll request that people speak with their masks on if they feel comfortable doing that.
Okay, unless there are any further questions, I'll go ahead with the rest of my list. Do want to point out in your board update, you're going to have some information on our phone migration, which is saving us a significant amounts of money. So hats off to Dwayne Alton, Trey Davis, and the ISD team. It's like a $689,000 savings, over the next 5 years, and then 523 thereafter. And again, more details are in your board update. So just bringing that to your attention. I think congratulations to our district and our TALC bargaining teams under the leadership of Dr. Pruitt. Great job. A lot of hours put into the tentative agreement, but I think they set really good examples about how to have some really difficult discussions and generate some really positive solutions for the district. So all of them, teachers and our administrative team really put in a lot of hours, but we've got a good agreement, so I just appreciate those efforts there. I also want to say thank you to our school-based teams that participated in helping with the student selection process. They continue to work on that, reach out individually to students. We had about, I think, 10,000 students that we were still working on, but very good response rate, initially with that 77,000. So we felt really good about that, but then to take that extra step, and our school teams have really gone to work on that. So I appreciate their efforts there. Very similar, I had a conversation with the superintendent down in Collier County. They've also had some good results with their student participation rates, and we're very similar in terms of our breakdown. They're a little bit higher face-to-face down there at about 58%, but that counts them adding in the people they couldn't get in touch. Those numbers are added into their numbers already. Ours are not added in there yet. So we both decided that was probably pretty close in terms of results between the two districts. So just kind of an FYI there, but thank you to our school teams for that. Was a good discussion at our master board training, I felt, so I appreciated that. So some of those things in terms of traits were things I was able to weigh in as well. And they also asked me personally what would I do to help support that effort, and I provided some feedback there. The biggest part, just so everybody knows, because that wasn't included in what came out today, was just I think it's our job to make sure you're equipped with the information that you need to do that advocacy that we talked about. So we want to be there to support you when you are being an advocate out in the community. And I think it was clear. I think Cindy did make this clear, but I'll just reiterate it. It's also about the opportunity that when we do have problems out there, that we work as a team to solve those problems. So not shying away or saying we don't have any, because we certainly all do, but that we work together to solve them. Just want to make you aware of some community events. I think it was mentioned. I spoke to the Southwest Florida Chamber last week, the Downtown Rotary this week. That was actually an in-person event down at Broadway Palm down here. That I think was a lot of questions about our reopening, but both very good events. Yesterday, I participated with some of the other community leaders down at the courthouse just to show community unity, and that was county commissioners, Dr. Antonucci, our sheriff, folks from United Way, and others participated in that event. So that was a good discussion, and our county manager, Roger DeJarlais, reemphasized that they do have PPE available if the school district needs some support in that area. We just need to reach out and get that. So I've passed that on to our team, and so that they are aware of that. Our staff, and specifically Lauren and Beth and others, continue to work on a flow chart for communications and also reporting actions as we reopen our schools. So if we get reports of positive cases, making sure that we do the proper notification, and also the decision-making actions that we're going to take as a result of any positive case. So they have been working on that and making sure those things have been vetted with our Department of Health and also Lee Health. So that work continues to go on. Really good work. It's very detailed. pretty intense, but I think it's going to be data informed, research informed decision making, and those flow charts will help us with that. Dr. Spiro wanted to let us know he has 55 teachers right now working on developing instructional practices for teachers that will be utilizing the Lee School Connect model. That's to, again, I think one of the things that, I know I've heard Ms. Morgan and probably others of you say that this is a real opportunity for us to improve and really improve our craft. And so this is a way we can do that right now, start working on how are we going to do instruction using Lee Schools Connect. What are the best ways to do it? So we've got 55 teachers working on that right now so that we can be ready to train all the teachers that are involved in that. And speaking of teachers, we've had 4,000 teachers at this point complete the intent form in terms of how they would like to come back in the fall, and in what model. And right now we've got, we're hovering around 70% that are utilizing that face-to-face model. That is their preference. We'll keep you posted, but we already have about 4,000 teachers that have completed that form. That is it for my comments. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back to Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atkins. I appreciate that. And I just want to give a special shout out to Cindy McClung for facilitating our master board and for all of the help and support that she gives us along the way. And also thank you, Attorney Dupree-Bruno, for the hard work on the policies, and we appreciate your guidance and support. Seeing no other business to come before this board this afternoon, this meeting is adjourned. Stay well, be safe, and have a great weekend. Thank you.